But there is a campaign trying to convince you that there is a white genocide underway in South Africa, or at the very least that it's coming, or at the very, very least that there is the disproportionate mass killing of white farmers in South Africa today. So let's look into this. Is there any data to suggest that there is an orchestrated attempt to kill white South Africans, particularly white farmers, en masse? And let's look at the campaign that's trying to convince you that this is happening, no matter what the data suggests.
One of my favorite places to go on the continent of Africa is South Africa. I mean, the vibe, the Amapiano, and just what's going on there. Hey, I love it. And most people in Africa love South Africa too. That's why it was very disturbing when I got this particular Twitter post you're looking at on the screen. And the post comes from an individual by the name of Boer and at Twitter BAAS. Now this is on X, and it's interesting that Twitter is owned by a Boer, Elon Musk. So maybe this is why this post can go up. But let's check out what he says. Let's talk straight for a minute. I hear on TV black politicians want to come and take our white farmers' farmland in South Africa. That's a really bad idea. Thousands of black lives will be lost if you try to do it. This is not Zimbabwe, that's all. So again, I see this photo, I see white people holding guns. And so I said, okay, I didn't even focus on the Twitter comments because that wasn't really necessary because I didn't know how many of these people are real or not. So I started researching and I started looking at, well, is there any black people in South Africa talking about taking white farmlands? And I just couldn't find any videos on it, which automatically made me feel like this was a made-up rumor. But I did come across this particular video by this YouTuber called The Issue with Dan Corder. And the name of the video was called The Truth About Farm Murder, White Genocide Claims in South Africa, which is an excellent video. I think you should all go and check it out. And the first thing he did to challenge this particular narrative is that white South African farmers need to be able to prove two things. Let's watch.
Anybody arguing that white South Africans, and particularly white South African farmers, are being killed en masse by black South Africans because they are white has to show two things. The first thing that they try to show is that there is evidence that white South Africans, and particularly white South African farmers, are being killed at an exceptionally high rate compared to the national average of murders every single year. And secondly, they have to show evidence that people are trying to get others to kill white South Africans.
Now, the second of those two things for me is the most important. Where is your proof that murders in South Africa have been happening towards white farmers? Fortunately enough for me, he did the work. And this is what he found out in that video.
Problem, which is that SAPS's definition of a farm murder is not just what we understand as the farmer versus the farm worker. SAPS's number 32,000 from 2007 describes farmers, farm owners, rather than farm workers, laborers, like the employees. So if we were to take the nearly 100,000 people who work on farms, whether as laborers or as owners, whether as employees or employers, nearly 1 million people, and take the around 70 deaths from 2017, then it's only 9 deaths out of every 100,000 farmers on average, way below the national average of 34 out of every 100,000, and nowhere near AfriForum's headline, which was 156 out of 100,000. And even if we set aside that claim from 2017 from AfriForum with the 3 big problems I've described, all of the claims from AfriForum and all the other people and organizations like them have 2 really big problems. The first one is that when SAPS and these agricultural unions put out their numbers of farm murders per year, they are including all employees and employers, laborers and owner managers, which means that the 50, for example, 50 farm murders recorded in 2022, not all of them were farmers. In fact, less than half of them were farmers, more than 20% of them were employees and laborers. And so if AfriForum and others are trying to make an argument that farm owners owners, farm managers, and by implication the white ones are being attacked, they've got even fewer farm murders to work with than the full totals that SAPS is putting out.
So now let's get to the point of why this whole thing is happening, right? There's been a lot of people over the years talking about white South Africans are in danger. Most notably, people on Fox, like Tucker Carlson when he was there. And we would always hear stories like this.
South Africa's Cyril Ramaphosa has begun, and you may have seen this in the press, seizing land from his own citizens without compensation because they are the wrong skin color. That is literally the definition of racism. Racism is what our elites say they dislike most. Donald Trump is a racist, they say. But they paid no attention to this at all. In fact, Ramaphosa is one of Barack Obama's favorite leaders in the world. In a speech just a few weeks ago, Obama praised him. He praised the racist government of South Africa and Ramaphosa by name for, quote, inspiring hope throughout the country.
And he would even bring people to interview like this.
There's been about 2 farm attacks every day and 2 farm murders every week in South Africa. And in the book, I highlight actually 10 different reasons why we believe the South African government is complicit. And it stretches from reasons including the fact that as these attacks have worsened, for example, in 2007, there was a 25% increase in these attacks. And then the South African government responded saying, we're not going to release any more statistics about this. Then also, which is very concerning, is the hate speech in South Africa. So we have, that's the title of the book as well, Kill the Boer, which is a very popular song, which is still being sung in South Africa. It was sung just the other day. So it's sung at political rallies, and of course, Boer referring to a particular cultural group in South Africa. Right. We have songs like Shoot the Boer, which is a different song. So there are a variety of ways in which we believe...
But I thought that hate speech was now a crime punishable by prison time in South Africa. Are any of the people who say this arrested?
Well, there's a bill on the table to have hate speech declared a crime punishable by prison time. But if you look at the motivation around this, it's very clear that I think those in government who are pushing this don't regard this as hate speech. As a matter of fact, they've been arguing that it's not hate speech in court. So they would argue that they have a right to sing about killing farmers.
Which is very interesting to me, because white South Africans, when they had power, they were completely atrocious towards black South Africans. Completely. Like, you ever heard of something called apartheid? Yeah, that's what you guys did to them. And technically, when they talk about it not being your land, well, they would have a very strong point. Let's rewind. Let's flip the script, right? Assuming me and a bunch of blacks moved to a country like Poland, right? Let's say like 200 years ago. And then we just started to take all over the whites, and we took their land. And we pretty much made them serve us. Well, then when the Polish people come back into power, what would they say? Would they say that, well, and imagine if they start coming after us, they start doing things to us, if that was the case. What would the world say? Would they say, let those blacks keep the land? No, they wouldn't say that. They would have been got us up out of that land long time ago. And they would have sent us back to Africa. And if we would even made it back to Africa alive, probably in a body bag. That's how it would have came back to Africa. But it's very interesting when the whites are there holding on to the land that they stole from those blacks. So obviously you can see why. So what the whites are saying, look, we know we stole your land and we have guns. But the black South Africans, in my honest opinion, doesn't seem like they are so worried about, well, the white South Africans have this land. It doesn't seem like they're killing them any more than the national average. If that's even being killed at all, we don't know who's killing them. In fact, he proved in that clip that white South Africans and farmers die at a lesser rate. So what's the propaganda then? The propaganda is to make the world feel sorry for these white South African farmers. That's what they want. Now, I've seen situations where whites in America have even given white South African farmers money or allegedly white South African farmers money, and then they got scammed and stuff like that. So the reality is that this is not even a big issue. But again, this is a bigger issue to try to shed light on what's happening in South Africa than make themselves feel like they're victims. The reality is you're not victims. If it was anything else going on in the world, and I understand it wasn't your fault that you were born there, if it was us, it wouldn't be an issue. So stop lying on Black South Africans. Of course, we know they're having issues with some of the electricity things there, and they're having issues with the economy, but this being an issue is not an economy. You have some idiot out there trying to make it seem as if there's really big beef going on right now, and it's not. It's not, right? I think what some of these people want to do is they're trying to, get into some of these other countries. First of all, some of these white South Africans who are complaining about this and that are still stuck in South Africa, in my honest opinion, probably are the least skilled. The most skilled South Africans that are white have went to other African countries. Some of them have I've even seen some white South Africans going over to Georgia, the country, not the city, not the state, right? But the ones that are probably doing this propaganda are the ones that are poor and can't leave. They want to get the out of there and they can't. So here's a propaganda to say, hey, listen, we're going to have a race war. Can you guys get us out of there so we can go someplace else? Unfortunately, European countries probably don't like you that much. Otherwise, it would have came and got your ass, in my honest opinion. What I see from this guy, that this is completely bogus and this is not true. Nobody's checking for y'all. Because if I honestly felt that if that was the case, they would have dealt with you in a great way already. And there's probably nothing much you can probably do about that if that was the case. Because there's just too many of them, it's not enough of y'all. If they really wanted to come after y'all like that, they probably would have done so a long time ago. I don't think they're really worried about y'all right now as the case. But I could be wrong, I'm not sure. Based off what I've heard, I'm not hearing it's a problem. But what do you think is the reason for this, guys? Subscribe at the bell. It's your boy O'Shea Duke Jackson. Back with the episode of Fair Use. We're out.